Welcome to Lifting Leaders Podcast. I'm Tricia Rhine.
And I'm Kristal Roberts.
This year, we're exploring leadership through a three-phase journey: light the spark, ignite genuine hope, and lead the change. Each phase builds on the one before it, helping leaders develop the mindset and practices needed to create meaningful impact. We're currently in phase 2, ignite genuine hope, where we're examining how leaders foster trust, cultivate a sense of belonging, strengthen resilience, and inspire people to see and move towards new possibilities. Join us as we explore practical insights and real-world experiences that demonstrate the power of hope as a catalyst for growth, connection, and positive change.
As we move deeper into this phase, we're discovering that genuine hope is far more than optimism. It's an active leadership practice. Hope grows when people feel seen, valued, and connected to a purpose greater than themselves. Throughout these conversations, we are exploring how leaders can create the conditions for trust, belonging, and resilience to flourish, helping individuals and teams navigate uncertainty while building confidence in what is possible ahead.
Our guests today are two remarkable women whose journeys embody the very essence of hope-led leadership. Though both have joined us on the podcast before, this is the first time they are meeting each other. Leah and Sasha share a unique connection. Both were raised in the United States, yet each has courageously forged a life and career abroad. Sasha in Spain and Leah in Portugal. Through their consulting practices, they're helping individuals, teams, and organizations reimagine what is possible, demonstrating every day that leadership grounded in hope can transcend borders, inspire transformation, and create meaningful change in the lives of others.
Today, we have the pleasure of reconnecting with two friends of ours whose dreams have become their realities, with all the joys, insights, challenges, and genuine hope that come with embracing their lives in foreign countries while navigating their professional careers on a global level.
Yeah. So settle in. Join us. But before we do, I think we need to learn a little bit about these two women, right? We're going to start with Sasha Farley, who was with us in January of 2024. And it was kind of a 3-part deal. You were with us with Judy Oyedele. Is that correct? Yeah. Sasha is the founder of Sasha Farley Consulting, where she uses neuroscience to help operational leaders build teams and companies that don't just perform, but outperform. With a bachelor's degree in psychology and neuroscience, a master's in organizational development, and 9 years inside management consulting firms, she noticed something most leaders miss. We're still running our companies based on a 1900s operating system that treats people like machines. Her work focuses on helping businesses integrate the science of outperformance to challenge the way we have always done things, to instead designing our operating models to align with what our brain actually needs to do to get their best work done. She does all of this living in Madrid, Spain, serving clients internationally to help create a world where businesses thrive and humans flourish.
We may have to actually have a little side conversation about this science of outperformance. I actually haven't heard anything about that. So wow, that's cool. And I get to talk a little about Leah Fleischner, who also has been a guest on our podcast back in November of 2023. She's a certified executive coach through Hudson. So we know we have a lot of Hudson listeners out there. So she's one of that gang. And she's a facilitator and advisor to executives. Her path has moved through startups, emerging technology, and facilitating global leadership forums for YPO. Through her work with senior leaders, she's found again and again that even the most capable leaders can reach a point where something beneath the strategy feels unresolved, where trust has thinned, patterns keep repeating, and the most important conversation in the room remains unspoken. She facilitates board meetings, leadership retreats, and the kind of sensitive, high-stakes discussions that require deep presence. Her inner sovereignty framework helps leaders uncover the deeper architecture of how they lead, the patterns they repeat without realizing, the intuition they override, and the survival strategies that carried them here but can no longer carry them forward. At the core of everything is one belief: the role of a leader is inherently human. And in these times of profound global change, it is our willingness to embrace our full humanity that is the most courageous act a leader can make. Leah is based in Lisbon, Portugal, and works with leaders globally. I love that there is this connection between the two of you around seeing leadership, and really what we need next is more humanity, more human. Yeah. Yes. So welcome, Sasha and Leah, to Lifting Leaders Podcast. We're thrilled to have you back. Before we dive into our interview questions, is there anything that you wanted to say?
No,
We've got shaking heads. No, they're like,
thank you for having us.
We all remembered simultaneously. This is not a video. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank goodness, huh?
Audio. Yeah. We're in people's ears. That's right. Yeah.
We're very happy to be here.
And they're just meeting for the first time. So that's kind of fun too. Yeah. We knew that would be a fun connection to make kind of in the moment. So
you should be fast friends by the end of this.
We hope so.
So yes, neighbors, country neighbors, as we said earlier.
Yes.
Basically are, right. So
country neighbors with the same mindset, super excited.
Yeah. Yes.
We always begin our interviews, and you may remember this, with that question, although you each have been here before. This one, let's hear where you've been since then. Tell us your story. Who would like to begin?
Okay, I'm being pointed to, so I shall begin. Yes, it's wonderful to be back, and I'll start by saying it's just really fascinating to reflect on where I was the last time I was on this podcast, because I was, from what I recall, in the mountains of Colorado.
Yes,
with my dog.
Yeah.
Reflecting on where I wanted to be next. And we were going through the Hudson model around the different stages of life. And at that time, I was deep in a cocooning phase. And so I naturally reflected back on our last conversation. And I quite moved, actually, to be here now, because I think that at that time, Portugal was not at all on my radar. I was not thinking about moving to Portugal. I was not thinking about moving abroad. And the thing that I knew was that I felt like my time in Austin, Texas, which was where I was based before, was coming to a close. And I was in seeking. I was seeking internally and seeking externally, to find my place in the world, and while I was also moving through kind of an identity shift of my own. And so would you like me to tell more about my story that I've shared in the previous podcast? Would that be helpful to mention now, or would you like me to go with just where I was at the time before to now? What would be the best?
I think you're doing fine.
Yeah, you can give us a little of the previous too. Yeah.
Okay, I'll do a combination. Yes. So I was born and raised in Hot Springs, Arkansas, in the United States, which is really fun question to answer when people ask me abroad where I'm from, because I get to say Arkansas, and then everyone just kind of looks at me with a head tilt, and they're like, "Okay." And most of the time don't really know what to say after that. But my life growing up was, I'm the daughter of an entrepreneur, and both my parents ran a business together. And I think that really ties to the work that I do as an executive coach. I saw how deeply personal it can be to run a business, to lead a business, that the lines or the veil between where you work and when you come home are very thin. And I think when I learned about coaching and learned that it was a possibility, it became something that felt very aligned to my life. I've always been curious about people since a very young age, of why people do the things they do, and how people can coexist together. And I think that organizations are these little microcosms where you see all of these different people coming together from different points of view, different perspectives, having different skill sets, and creating a community that is working towards something specifically. So for me, that's been a big part of my journey, both in my personal life, but also my professional life. I got my Hudson coaching certification in 2019 with Kristal. She was in my Hudson cohort, and we've been connected ever since. And um, through that journey, that was around the time that I started my coaching and consulting business. And my business has moved from doing just coaching, but also bringing in innovation, facilitation, and design thinking, as well as doing consulting with startups and emerging technology. And now has really landed in a new phase, really focused on facilitating leaders in person and doing more in person work, whether it's board meetings, leadership retreats, executive team dynamics. Oftentimes, executive teams are trying to find alignment, and there needs to be someone coming in who's external who can help them see or even state the things that people are uncomfortable stating. And part of why I'm drawn to that work now is because I feel like where we are as a world is in this place where we are very isolated and separated from each other in a lot of ways. And while remote work has been empowering in many ways, it also has created a lot of miscommunication. And when things happen very quickly, it's natural for there to be a little bit of adapting that needs to happen. And so I feel like my work is really called to be in the room now, and work with groups and transitioning from the one-on-one coaching to doing more of the group coaching, which I've done through YPO forums, and now I'm doing solely in my own business as well. And that ties to even what brought me to Portugal. So coming back to when I was in the mountains of Colorado talking to you all, I guess the spring of 2023, I had a significant life transition. I left a significant relationship in my life and chose to sort of start fresh. And what felt like the clearest message to me at that time was that Austin was not where I wanted to be anymore. It was a great city, and I love Austin. I have much community there, and I miss many things about it. But that felt like the clear message. And so I kind of went in a searching mode of trying different places out in the US, and was in Colorado, was up in the Pacific Northwest, visited both of you all there. And gosh, at one point thought I was going to move to North Carolina. Then there was a flood that happened the same time that I was going to go visit North Carolina. And what I can say is that it was fascinating because it was really a time of both cocooning and also surrendering to what was to be, allowing things to unfold in front of me, to have the path move forward. And I think that, even in like the Joseph Campbell, walking through the cave and not knowing what's on the other side, it was very much one of those moments in my life. And through a lot of things working out and a lot of things not working out, I somehow ended up here in Portugal in November of 2024. And as soon as I landed and my first day, it felt like this just um, exhale, this giant exhale that I've been holding in my breath, holding my breath. And I realized that I had this mental checklist. Well, I knew I had this mental checklist that I was sort of using at each place that I went. And all of a sudden, Portugal seemed to have almost all of the things, with the exception of my family, who I'm very close to, and struggle with the distance from them. But it had so many things that I was looking for, and it also felt like a place that I could be in my full expansion that I was stepping into, and that I felt like I was stepping into. And so I moved here officially in October of 2020. 5, almost 2 years from the time that I spoke to you all. So a great lesson in time. You don't know how much time it's going to take. It took me about 2 years to get to where I was seeking. And I would say that I fully landed both in body and mind and spirit probably about 2 months ago. So
Nice.
when I got the apartment that you all can see behind me, and all those kinds of things. So that's the story. Had to go
Wow.
first, so we'll see how that.
Thank you, Leah.
If I covered everything.
I
Yes.
love the fact that you were talking about, it took time. And I feel like in this hurried world that we live in, everybody wants things to be instant. And sometimes we have to be patient and let things unfold a little.
What stood out for me was the surrender part. I hadn't,
Yeah.
it's not something that we think about very often, but there are times when that's exactly what we need to do. So that was beautiful.
Yeah.
Sasha, how about yourself? Tell us your story.
Well, my story, I was trying to think about that. It's always so hard with this question because you're like, how do I summarize my whole life and do a quick story? For me, I think the most important part about my history in relation to the conversation we're going to have today is around, I've always been, even from a kid, and it drove my parents insane, a sort of person who questioned why things were the way that they were and didn't really accept the just because I said so. I never really accepted that the world worked the way it worked just because it worked that way. If it didn't make sense to me, even as a 4-year-old, I was like, I may or may not follow that. And so that's come into my life as well as an adult. And as an adult, I've just learned to do it a little bit less destructively, I guess you would say. And I find it really interesting. And I've been thinking about this a lot, especially in my move to Spain, how that basic value that I have of questioning the assumptions we make impacts the choices that I make in my life and in my work. Obviously, in my work, as you introed, it's a core of what I do. I really always wonder why things work the way that they work and question if that's a true assumption or not. And the more I learned about the brain, I geek out about the brain too. My parents were psychologists. So I got interested in the brain from that sense. And then my first neuroscience class in college, and I was like, wait, all of what we do is based on chemicals, some of which literally look like they're walking. This is crazy. I'm in. What is this? I want to dive deeper into it. And when I started to learn more about that, I started to realize that there are some assumptions that we have that might not actually fit the way that our biology and our chemistry and all that stuff actually works. And that is since I graduated, the research has gone crazy in the past 10 to 15 years on that with all these different tools and resources that we have. And with AI, I think we're going to get so many more insights because we can do so much better analysis coming through all that material. And all of that just made me realize how important it is to question how we work and also to question how we live. So all of my work, I know our first conversation I had on here with you guys was around human flourishing and how we can help create human flourishing in the world. And what I'm doing through science is trying to bring that to businesses that may not be prioritizing human flourishing in the biggest sense, and to help them question their assumptions, but from something that feels more concrete, right, than the concept of flourishing, which sometimes I even struggle to. I talk about it, somewhat of an expert in it, and I still sometimes struggle to make it concrete enough. And so that's where I kind of challenge everything to align with the way our brain functions, because in this world that's changing and adapting really quickly, that's the only constant, is our brain is going to be the only constant piece in it, and how our brain functions is changing. How do we adjust to that and create the spaces to allow it to work at its best, whatever that means? And it's going to change over time what it means to work at its best for our brain perspective. And so for me, from a personal side, me questioning everything also tends to be me wanting to change my environment a lot. I think adaptability and adapting is baked into my DNA. I kind of force myself to do it all the time. I move as much as humanly possible. Even when my job forces me to be in the same city when we had to work in person, my friends would laugh because every year or two I would move to a different part of the city. I just can't be in a consistent space. It feels like it stifles me in a way. And because of that, I've always wanted to move further. I took a whole year off to travel full time when I didn't know what I wanted to do for my job. I had a career change in my mid-20s, and I always knew that I wanted to live somewhere besides the US for a long time. And that's what brought me to Puerto Rico, where you interviewed me the last time I was in Puerto Rico. And so Spain was a natural progression. I'm not sure I knew exactly I was going to be moving to Spain. I had a couple criterias, and Spain came up as the top one for a lot of different reasons. And it's one of those things, I don't know if you had this experience, Leah, but when I started to think about it, like it just became the most obvious thing. Like once that became like in the realm of possibilities, it was like, well, obviously that's the right choice. And when I landed here, it clicked in a way that I felt like this is more of a place that aligns with who I am now. Like I said, I still like to move around a lot, so I don't know if it's going to be the place forever, but it definitely aligns to who I am now. And I feel like I found a place where I can be myself in a way that I don't know if I could have fully been in other places, and where people accept me. And so that's been a really fun journey to go on, both in my business sense and in my personal sense. So I'm happy to be here to talk more with you guys.
Wow. I know that you have moved around because you started this whole journey. Weren't you in South America way back when?
Traveled a bit in South America.
Yeah.
That when I traveled full time, it was Central and South America, and then I went back to DC for a long time, and have been a bunch of places in the U.S. growing up as well. So,
Two travelers.
Yeah. Citizens of the world is what I would say. Yeah. And I love how both of you were saying that when you arrived at where you're now at, it felt right. Mm-hmm. It was like, oh yeah, this is where I need to be right now, for now anyway. Yeah. Listening to your inner voice around that, sort of your intuition. So many people are feeling uncertain, discouraged, or emotionally exhausted by the state of the world right now. Yet both of you made a bold decision to build a life abroad. So you've talked a little bit about this, but maybe anything that you would add. What sparked that decision, and what were you hoping for beyond just a change in geography?
I can start with that one. I think for me, the change sort of came from a deep sense of, I love Puerto Rico. I loved living there. I'm part Puerto Rican. I moved there to get to know my culture and my ancestry. But I also at the same time felt that that wasn't my place. It wasn't the place that aligned with what I wanted to do, that gave me the opportunities that I wanted. And I felt it in a really visceral way, like in my body, actually. And so that's kind of what got me to start shifting and moving. And for me, some of the choices for choosing Spain, I know I hinted at it, but was continuing the journey of following my blood and my ancestry. And in Puerto Rico, I learned that my great-grandparents were from Spain, from Mallorca. I didn't want to move to another island. I was like, I'm on an island. I want a big city now. So I moved to Madrid. But that was part of the decision of where to go and how to trace it. I want to be fluent in Spanish, the language of my family. Learn from that. Learning different languages teaches you a lot about how we process information. It changes how your brain works in ways as well. And so that's just part of the place to explore and observe, and just listening deeply to my body was a big part of the choice that I made. And not questioning it, not being, is this logical, is this sound? It was like, this feels like the right thing. Not going to question it. I'm just going to jump before I think too much. And that was part of how I ended up here.
It's interesting because I think that, and I don't think that this is an uncommon response to think, oh, it's so bold, it's so brave to move abroad. And I do think it is a courageous decision. It can be a courageous decision. I think that also it's a little bit of how you look at risk. And for me, it felt like a bigger risk to stay in Austin. Like it felt like that was actually the riskier decision for me, because it felt, I had this deep feeling of, this is not where I need to be right now. And that feeling started, speaking of time, back in like 2017.
Wow.
So, and I also have, I worked for a company based out of San Francisco. So I was traveling a lot to San Francisco. I dated someone who had significant roots in the UK. So I was spending a lot of time in the UK. So there were these different ways that I sort of made Austin more palatable for me for those years. But there was always this deep feeling of there's somewhere else that I feel like I'm meant to be. And so I feel like to first to answer the question around that the bold decision or the choice to move, I feel like and also to come back to even what Sasha said, I've also been someone who's kind of followed my own drumbeat for quite a long time and kind of challenged the status quo of why do we do things this way? What, why is this the path? Like marry, get children, do these different things. Not that there's anything wrong with that at all, but there's just this desire to live a life that feels more in alignment with myself and then allow everything else to kind of fall into place. And I think that after my life transition that I mentioned, that became almost like a defiance within me of I am going to create the life that I want to live because I was living a life that didn't feel aligned. And it took time. It had certainly sacrifice to it. And I think that it was also a response to the world around me. I feel like a lot of the um, information that's around us, certainly in the United States. I mean, I won't speak for Sasha, but living outside of the US, I mean, there's such a frenetic energy right now in the United States. And there's so much noise that we're being inundated with all the time from media to just yeah, media is the main one, is the most significant one. But even how we live and how we move through the world, there's this a lot of things that are not necessarily good for our nervous system. Being in traffic all day is not good for your nervous system.
Right.
Working a job that it was really designed for like industrial age living back in like the early 1900s is not good for your nervous system. Getting notifications of an earthquake in a country that you've never heard of and hearing of hundreds of thousands of people dying is not good for your nervous system. So it's like, how do you change? You don't necessarily have to physically remove yourself from an environment and move to another country. That doesn't necessarily have to be the answer. But how do you make a life more of something that you can live within and be really protective of that? Because I feel like a lot of what I was feeling, and before I made some of the transitions that I made, was feeling powerless. And so a lot of my choices were, how do I take my power back? And that was even taking my power back from um, sources like social media, sources like the news, and really looking at things in a different lens, in all aspects, not just where I physically lived. So that's what I would say is what does it look like for you to, for those who are kind of struggling with this, what does it look like for you to really stand in your own power and protect your sacred sovereign self, because that is how you serve the world the best way, is by protecting that part of you, so that you can be grounded, so you can be a good parent, so you can be a good partner, so that you can be a good leader. And I think that Sasha can probably speak more to the neuroscience aspect of that than I can. But that's been a big part of my journey. I would say the physical move, while has been a significant part of it, it's been a lot around my inner sanctuary, matching my outer sanctuary.
I think it's, really fascinating when I think about the way we're raised in the United States. We really are not raised with the idea that we could cross borders, that we don't have to live in the United States. In fact, we do everything to keep ourselves in the United States. We get very patriotic. We have all sorts of things that make us proud to be here, right? But there are so many people who may not feel that way. And to question that or to move outside of that thinking might be a little too risky. I find this fascinating because it is something I always wanted as a kid. I lived in Japan for a very short period of time when I was really little, and I always thought, this is so cool. We don't have to live in San Diego. So, but this is something that I think people might really be interested in hearing, because it is a changing in the, that whole paradigm change about, be patriotic to here, stay here, support here, pay here, and not having that constraint, and how that might actually change the way you navigate the world now, right? So living abroad often stretches people beyond familiar routines. We're talking about that, systems and identities. How has this experience changed the way you think about hope, not as optimism, but as something you actively practice or cultivate?
So for me, one of the interesting things that happened when I first started moving is, yes, it throws your entire routines off. And from a neurological perspective, like, environment makes your habits. So when you move from one environment to another, even if you just go on vacation, your habits go out the window. That's why you can be really good at exercising at home. And then when you're on vacation, you're like, why have I zero motivation to go to the gym? And so going to a whole different country, every environmental trigger basically disappeared. So it was an opportunity to really recreate my habits, some of which I worked really hard to establish. And I'm a little sad I have to work again to establish them. Some of them is nice to change and do something different and adapt fully. One thing that came up for me is I use this tool called the Adaptability Intelligence Assessment, the AQAI assessment, and it measures your skills, your preferences, and also it's for work, so your work environment around it. But I was thinking about the model as I was going through this, and your question about hope is also something that came up for me a lot as well. Hope in that model is like a really big driver of your ability to adapt successfully to really big changes in your environment. And so if you have low hope, you tend to have lower ability to adapt, and a lot of other behaviors that make you more likely to resist change, which is difficult. And it doesn't matter if you moved across the country, but it's extra important to be aware of if you're moving across the country and to keep a hopeful mindset. But it can also be really hard, because needing to reestablish everything and having every routine stripped from you means everything is so much harder. So much harder. And everything is so much more complicated to do, and everything just takes so much more mental effort. And understanding that and how to keep hope involved while that is happening is, I think, key in helping it be a successful change. Or becoming so overwhelming that you want to go back to where you are, and seeing the opportunities in the change versus the negatives in it. And so I like how you called out that hope isn't just optimism. It's something you have to actively practice, because there are some days where I am overwhelmed and I have to do the practice that I help my clients with when I use this survey. So I was like, this is really helpful. I use it with them. I'm going to use it on me. Like, practice what you preach, girl. And I was like, I am not happy right now. And it's like, how do we reframe this into something not positive, but into something that you can use as a learning opportunity into how you adapt, into reflecting what triggers you, what doesn't trigger you, and how you can lessen triggers on the days where you're just wake up exhausted, and maybe you don't go to the grocery store on the days you're tired. We can talk about that more later, but for some reason, grocery stores are my overwhelm trigger. and choose different things. So I think that's really important when you think about it. And I think making huge moves helps you realize how you adapt even to small things. And it's a really great opportunity as well. And for people who want to make big changes, I think it's just helpful to, even when small changes happen, you can use it as a time to reflect and think about how you respond, to maybe build more hope in yourself, even in small situations. Even in the US, as Leah described, there's a lot that challenges and pushes our hope to go away, honestly. But it's up to us to be able to practice being hopeful. And without hope, you're not going to be able to adapt. And I think we all need to adapt regardless of where we choose to live. So that's been a really interesting learning opportunity, and practice building the skill of keeping and maintaining my hope.
Yeah, it's so interesting to think about that in our big moves, we learn how we can even do the small moves better. Like that stretching, and we kind of think about that when we do that, right? It's like we've stretched ourselves really far, and then it's like, oh, I can do these small things now more effectively because I've seen what the sort of bigger, more challenging, courageous moves look like.
It's interesting because I think about where I work, and we're going through a lot of transition right now. And so you can almost see the people who are living a little on the shy side of hope. They're the ones who have the comeback whenever you say, well, let's keep moving forward. What do you need to move forward? What do you need to be successful? How can I support you? That kind of thing. And it's like, there's nothing you can do. We're just going down the tubes. It's just, and they're not going to be moving very far, right? And so I turn into a pretzel trying to figure out how to, show them how hope is really something that can shift our thinking, but it shifts the world around us. And so that becomes a career, trying to get people who are not necessarily so hopeful. And part of it is the outside world right now. To your point, Leah, it's like social media and all of that stuff is crazy. But those people who have a high degree of hope and you hear them talk about it, they're leading the change. They're leading the charge for everything. And it's encouraging to see that we have those points of reference or those models. If people would if it's just the right time for them to hear the message, they need to just turn that switch, right? How about you, Leah?
Well, first, I just love knowing a fellow person who doesn't like grocery stores. That's very reassuring to me. Sasha and I need to hang out. It's clear.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in Arkansas, as I mentioned, and in Arkansas, this is my theory. I don't know if this is true, but my theory is that growing up in Arkansas, Walmart is headquartered in Arkansas, and so as a kid, the main grocery stores we had were like the Walmarts, and our town was like the second Walmart supercenter shop. And I remember having to go there with my mom as a kid, and like the fluorescent lights in this giant freezing building and super crowded. And it was just, again, like very overstimulating for my nervous system. And I hated it. And so I still have never been a big grocery store fan. Now you have the small ones here in Portugal. You have to go to like 4 different places to get the thing. Anyway, so it's nice to know that I'm not alone in that. And you, listener, are not alone either, those of you who don't like grocery stores. Speaking of that, I was thinking about this question, and I feel like for me, what I've felt hopeful about after kind of moving abroad, it's my second time to move abroad. I lived in Spain years ago, but this time and Sevilla actually, and this time it feels much different because I'm approaching it at a much more mature age and different way than I was then. But I feel like something that I really love about living in Europe specifically is the inconvenience, is that things are not as convenient as in the US. And Esther Peralta actually talks about this, that it creates friction points. It creates these times where you actually have opportunities for connection that you don't have as much when you have all those things easily accessible to you. And that creates community, connection, and feeling less isolated. And it's interesting because a lot of times what I hear from people who talk to me about moving abroad is they're like, how do you make friends? How do you meet people? Do you are you by yourself all the time? And it's quite the opposite. I have had a really, fortunately, I think it depends on also where you move to. Like if you move to certain countries, they're not as open. I think that Spain and Portugal just naturally, culturally is a much more, warm weather. Anthropologically, it's a place where people are more inviting. But I have had a very easeful time meeting people here and also building support systems. Now, it's totally true that the overwhelm is very real. And I actually feel like part of my own healing and choosing to move abroad is me healing one of my wounds around being independent and not relying on other people. And by choosing to live in a country where I didn't know anyone and very far away from my family, I have to rely, I don't have to, but I'm choosing to try to rely on the friendships and community that I've built here. The expat communities in general, I find to be very supportive because we're all have that similar likeness in knowing that we're all from somewhere else. And so, learning the banking system, learning taxes, learning these different things, learning how to set up your your utilities, all of these different things, you can oftentimes find within your community people who are like, oh, I use this person, or I had to navigate some things with my dog, who's a senior dog, and had some support with that. Had some also received some news sometimes that I had to lean on some friends, and so it's really been this interesting shift for me because for me, my hope is in connection and community and how we are not alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that goes back to these feelings of feeling powerless or isolated or disconnected from yourself and from others when you're put into these environments where you really don't know what you don't know. The best source of support are the people around you, and that's not just expats. Like I've had some really beautiful moments with Portuguese people. I don't speak Portuguese yet. That's something I'm working on, and will be working on for probably a long time. But I had some really beautiful moments of connection with some Portuguese neighbors and learning the language and being curious of how different people do things and not making assumptions. And and that is for me, that as the person who loves understanding people and why people do the things they do, it's such a source of hope because I think that we're all wanting much more similar things than we realize. And we all want comfort, we all want security, we want love, we want our families to be, we want good health. And so when you share that, even one thing I love here is culturally, and it's not unlike Spain, is you always say good morning or good afternoon. You always greet someone when you walk into a shop, but you always say goodbye when you're leaving. You acknowledge them, you ask them how they're doing, which for me really connects me back to my Southern roots in the US. And so that source of connection makes me feel, even at times when I didn't know as many people, it really made me feel less alone in a country uh, that I didn't know very many people. So that is my source of hope.
I love that. And I love that there's this, I don't want to say it's necessarily tension, but maybe it's a little bit of a paradox around community, creating a community, and also recognizing the need to have time to yourself, independence. So having both of those, being able to hold community and that need and your ability to be more independent. Yeah, love that. So as you reflect on your journeys of working across international lines, cultures, and leadership spaces, how has this experience deepened your understanding of hope-led leadership? And what gives you the most hope for the future of leadership around the world?
This is a tricky question. Hope is so important, as I already mentioned, for adaptability. We have to be adaptable. Everybody has to be adaptable. Businesses and leaders have to be adaptable. At the same time, there's a need, as we talk about, that me and Leah both believe in. It's important to be centering the human in everything as well. I do it from a science perspective, and she does it from a lot of other lenses as well. I think when we talk about hope-led leadership, one of the most important things that helps with that is recognizing the humanity in everybody that you work with and everyone that you're leading, and that we all are whole humans, more similar than we are different. It doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter where you live. If we think about what everybody's really wanting out of life, it's very similar. We want to feel connected. We want to feel like the work and effort we're putting in has a purpose. We want to feel like we're contributing to making things better for our kids, for our families, for those who don't want kids, just for the world around us, for ourselves even. It doesn't really matter where that drive to make things better comes from. The difference is we argue about how to do that, but what we want is very similar. And I think it's important to, as leaders, to recognize that when we show up at work, like from a work-based leadership perspective, there's leadership outside of work, but I'm going to bring it to the work-based leadership perspective. We spend the majority of our time, if we think about it, besides sleeping, at work, the way that our current societies are structured pretty much around the world. And so that work is a place where we have the opportunity to get a lot of what we need out of it. And so people are seeking that more and more when we start to realize how much of a role work plays. And I think the pandemic opened a lot of people's eyes into the possibilities of what you can experience while you're working, both the bad, but also the good, with the flexibility that you have, but also the overwhelm that you can have and the amount of support that we can give each other in a work setting. People were incredibly supportive. Almost every company was incredibly supportive of each other during that time. And I think a lot of the negative pushback we're seeing is because it's a whiplash effect of you cared so much about me during this time, and then all of a sudden you're acting like you don't care about me, and I know you can. And your business was still successful. And so I think from a leadership perspective, it's important to keep that in mind. Keep in mind that people are human. Come into it if you need to, and think that we're still in a pandemic. We still have the same stressors. We still have the same issues. If anything, our stressors are actually worse now than in the pandemic, because they're coming from so many different angles that it's not even one thing that we're trying to wrestle with at any given point in time. And change is happening at an exponential rate. It's not going to slow down. It's only going to get worse and worse and worse. And we're going to be dealing with more and more extreme stressors every single day. And the only way we can adapt as a society is to recognize the humanity of each other, and that we make mistakes. We're all stressed. We're all tired. How can we at work even create spaces where people can lean into the good and the bad part of humanity and create the space that they can flex and make adjustments as needed? And that's really, I think, the only way that we're going to be able to continue to perform in the crazy world that we are in. We are already seeing people burn out at higher rates because you can't leave non-work on outside of work anymore. Our phones bring it with us. Our computers bring it with us. The work that we do brings it with us, especially with AI and all that trying to be integrated in. It's a constant reminder in work settings that the world is changing at a rate that we have no control over, which is a huge threat trigger to our brains. So yeah, I mean, I think hope is a really easy thing to ground in with all of that, because I think we all understand what hope is in a really deep level, because I think it's a really human experience. And so I like the word hope-led leadership. I never really thought about that, but I think like that is a really important thing to maybe ground yourself in as a leader when you're overwhelmed, is how can I create hope for myself first? Fill your cup before you fill others. That saying, I think, is very valid. How can I create hope for myself? And then also then how can I create hope within my team in whatever things you're trying to address? And hope doesn't have to be these big societal hopes. It can even be hope that this project can be successful in a small scale, right?
Right.
I think that's an important thing that came up for me when I moved, and just seeing the consistency that the stressors are different here in Spain, but they still are, the solution and the needs and everything is still really similar regardless of all of that.
Yeah, so important. It's similar to one of my daughters had studied abroad in China, and it was just a 10-day intensive. She went with a group of people, and she came back. I picked her up in the airport, and I said, well, how'd it go? What did you learn? And she said that we're all people. And I thought, wow, that's pretty profound. If everybody should be traveling abroad and living abroad to learn that, right? We're all people. We all have those similar things, just like you were talking about. We all want connection and love and purpose. And yeah, it doesn't matter where you are in the world.
I wonder how much of an aha it is for people that are not from the United States, though, because I think we walk around on autopilot in our lives in America a lot of times. We don't have, it's not our first reaction or our first interaction with the world to say, gosh, look at that tree. I wonder what the root system looks like. We do if we become enlightened, but until that time, we walk around on autopilot all the time. We just assume that the store's going to be there. There's going to be a parking space. I'm going to have to pay for gas. It's like you don't really think about anything like that. And so I think it's easy for hope to take a back seat and maybe not even have a seat in your world until you need it, or until you you really don't have it, but you need it more than anything. And then it's not until something is presented that we find ourselves saying, oh, hope is a thing. You know, hope is important. I don't know. It just, when you were talking, I was thinking, gosh, do we all know what hope is about? You'd said everybody knows what hope is, and I'm thinking, do we all know what hope is? Really? You know, but yeah, it's interesting, very interesting. It'll keep me thinking about it until 2:00 in the morning. How about you, Leah?
Yes, I had a similar thought when Sasha said, we all know what hope is, and I think that our rational brain knows what hope is. I think that like the feeling of hope is something that many people feel less access to, and I feel like that is also there's conscious efforts being made to make that be the case in a lot of environments, specifically in the U.S. But I think that, of course, a lot of different places around the world. We're in a global world now. A part of my perspective on leadership and hope-led leadership, or just leadership in general, is that I feel like there's no one left to follow. Like the leaders, a lot of the leaders that we have looked at are no longer the one. When we think about even just a lot of different things that's happened in the news and things like that, and the leaders that we thought were one way and we're learning are a different way, and that can feel like a hopeless thought, like there's no one left to follow. But as leaders, our role is to be the leader. So to me, I think that that's actually can be a hopeful message. It can be a message of, okay, so this means that in these uncharted times, I get to charter the way, that I have my own inner knowing and inner way of doing things. I know that this way doesn't work for me. So what way does work? And I look at the landscape right now a lot like I had this thought recently with some different geopolitics things that are happening in our world, that it's a lot like, I don't know if you're familiar with that. A pilot has to use his instrument. He or she has to use their instruments to determine if they're flying right side up, because a pilot could actually be flying upside down and not realize it. Mm-hmm. And so the instruments are what tell you that. And right now, I feel like as a collective whole, not just as leaders, but we'll stick with just leaders, the instruments that we used before are no longer reliable instruments. The tools that we looked at outside of ourselves are no longer the most reliable tools. And so the hopeful message to me is that we have this tool right here. We have this body that can tell us a lot of different things. And even with the shifts that are happening with artificial intelligence, it's actually making us shift what we trust, because it's showing us things visually, and sound and sight are the two ways that we most rely on truth. And that is completely being thrown out the window with artificial intelligence. So to me, I think that is just a natural call to come back to our other senses. And you can come to it from a neuroscience perspective, from a somatic perspective. Mm-hmm. I think also for me and the work that I do, from a spiritual perspective, coming back to faith, coming back to a belief in something greater, belief into the unseen, quite literally, because we are looking, what we see in front of us can be created. And so thus, what is truth? Right. And so that, I think, can be a very provocative question, and also can be a very hopeful question to how to, and I think that the leaders of tomorrow, the leaders that are being asked to step into these uncharted times, are the leaders who are willing to lead and not follow other leaders. And so that's the hopeful message that I feel. And I feel like traveling abroad and putting yourself outside of your comfort zone is a really great way to see that there are other ways of doing things. Mm-hmm. And just like someone could come from Portugal and go to the US and be like, I was just talking to someone recently about garbage disposals. I have no idea why there aren't garbage disposals in Europe, or at least in Portugal. And I'm like, you don't even know what you're missing, the beauty of a garbage disposal. But there's all of these different ways of being that we all have learned, and those can make our lives easier. They can make our lives harder. And so I don't think it's that there's one way. I think that there's many different ways of leading through these times. And the United States and American culture has some really beautiful things about it that I miss. Portugal has some beautiful things about it that I love. I'm sure Spain. I mean, each place you go has these learned behaviors through their own cultural experiences. And now we're in this time where we're kind of, as a full earth, many of us, at least in the Western world, or in different places where you have the access to information readily available, which is most of the world now, we're trying to move more and in unison, and that's really hard to do. So I think that the hope is in how do you impact your own environment as a leader? How do you impact your team, the people you work with? And that starts with your own individual purpose. And that can be discovered through many different ways. But I come from the belief that the individual is not a threat to the interconnectedness of all of us. It's actually how we tie to the greater whole, that we're all a part of a greater whole. And so if each of us can follow our own truth, and if it leads us to another country, if it leads us to another role in an organization, that's actually a part of how we serve the planet best and our organizations best. So that's my hope is really tied to the uncertainty. I think that uncertainty, I think back to the Hudson conference when I'm forgetting her name, Dorothy
Simonovich. Yeah.
Thank you for saying her
Yes.
last name for me. She's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
She said your intuition is a tool for uncertainty. And I come back to that again and again. And as leaders, I think that our intuition is such a tool for us to navigate these times. What you see on the news or what you see in other organizations, I think oftentimes, especially because complexity rarely stands out on the town hall floor, is, especially right now, like kind of more regressive. But I see it as a slingshot. It's like we're pulling back to go really far forward, and sometimes you have to go backwards to know, wow, we really don't want to go backwards. But of course, that's a privileged place to be, to reflect on it that way.
Great metaphor, actually.
Yeah,
Pull
slingshotting.
that slingshot.
Yeah. That's hopeful, I think.
So as we get ready to wind down, and we are winding down, this has been a beautiful interview. I love it. I wish we had more time for this, but I'm going to just leave you with one more question for your quick answer, is that, you've landed in these new locations and you're navigating your personal and your business worlds differently now, but it sounds like you're thriving pretty well, maybe learning to thrive. But what's next for you? What's next on your horizon now that you've landed?
For me, it's really making this a home. So unlike some of the other moves, and like I said, I do tend to like to move around, but I do want to try making a home. One of the things with me moving to Spain was I want to stay here and see if I can make this my community and my home, and a place that feels like when I travel, I want to come back home here. I haven't had a place in my life that felt like home after my parents moved out of my childhood home, right? And so that comes with a very specific mindset here. And so for me, the next step is really creating that roots as much as possible in a big city with people who also want to stay here, and create like roots within the community that I live in, and the local shops and the local people, which is easier here. Similar, you say hi when you enter and bye when you leave. I'm still adjusting that because that's very different from the US, where the people are like, why are you talking to me? But that's one thing that I'm really looking forward to, is really creating those roots here in the community and learning more about what it means to be a citizen of Spain and to contribute to the community of Spain in the larger ways that I'm able to. So that's something I'm really excited about.
That's lovely.
Great.
Yes, I too feel like it's rooting and grounding in Portugal, and I feel like a big part of what feels more accessible to me here is my inner artist, my expression. And so while my work in leadership development has always had an aspect of it that has been tied to poetry and spirituality, I've been writing more poetry, and I'm a really big fan of David White, and am
Yes.
wanting to bring in uh, my poetry and my writing and thought leadership tied to really what's happening in the world today, because I feel like it's connected. I think that like the artistic expression is innately human, and no matter how it is expressed, even if we're just being really creative with our stories that we're writing for ourselves in our minds and our interpretation of things. So really leaning into that more into my work, and leading with that authenticity and the work that I do. I'm also really hoping in the fall and spring. I already have one set up in the fall, but to be hosting more retreats in Lisbon, executive team meetings in Lisbon. So if executive teams want to have a shift, Lisbon or the surrounding areas are really beautiful places to ground. And of course, the ocean is here, and it's funny because I too have been someone who's traveled a lot for work and just in life. And it's the first time that I'm like, I want people to come to me.
Oh, yeah.
And so while I will, of course, travel for work as needed, I would love to also offer this place that I find so much beauty and inspiration. And I think can be Portugal is the home of explorers.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of I think lessons in this land to be shared here. So
It's beautiful. Sasha, you did say that if you're in the United States or somewhere and you say hello to somebody in public, they look at you like you're from outer space a little bit. That's what I do every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And if people look at me weird, I don't care. I just keep talking to them.
It's your superpower of connection. People
Something.
do appreciate it. Yeah, they do.
in the South is a little different. In the South, people say hello. I think it depends on where you are in the US, but certainly in Hot Springs, Arkansas, you gotta say hello.
I'm like representing the Northeast,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Don't talk to
Yes.
me.
Yeah. And
But
I
isn't
lived in
that
the
great?
Northeast a lot.
That's the thing, is that like the US has the same diversity in it as well.
Yeah, it
we
is.
just speak the same language, sort of.
Yeah, it's debatable.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much. This has been lovely. I wish we could keep going, but I know that you both probably have busy schedules, and we have listeners whose commutes are only this long. But I would love for us to touch base again in the future. It would be lovely to see how things are going as you've made these two locations your homes. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I was going to say, how can people find you if they want to? I don't know if you're being public about your journey, obviously now, but your social media, do you have a social media presence or website if people are interested? Leah, in retreating in Lisbon. Yeah.
Yeah, so I have my website, leahfleischner.com, or LinkedIn is a great way to get a hold of me as well.
Okay. How about Sasha?
Same for me. Sasha Farley on LinkedIn, and SashaFarleyConsulting.com is my website if you want to check it out.
I did yesterday. I looked at both your websites. They're awesome. And did one of you say you're working on your website right now or something?
I am. Yeah, I'm redoing my website. So if you want to see the old version, go quick.
going. No, yeah, it's wonderful. They're both filled with great information, very well mapped out, and so we'll make sure that we put that in our show notes so people can reach you.
Yeah. Great. Thank you again so much. Best of luck on making it home around the world. Take care.
Thank you.
so much for having
me.
us.
Thank you.
It was lovely.
Bye.
Well, that was fun.
It was fun. It was so nice to see both of them again. You
Yes.
know, I felt like we really made friends with Judy and Sasha, you
Yeah.
know, and I just love following her. She's got some pretty interesting adventures she's been on, and I just love that. And of course, Leah, she is like our heart. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What a great person.
Yeah.
And I love that they're doing so well. I mean, they're discovering, right? They're still in discovery, but they both are looking at this as something that's a little more steady, permanent, or whatever. Maybe not completely permanent, but at least for now, right?
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. It just shifts your perspective, right? On
does.
what's possible. So before we go, we invite you to pause for just a moment and ask yourself, what spark was lit for me today? And where can I take one small, meaningful action? And one of the things that we talked about actually once we stopped recording was that you don't have to move abroad in order to shift your perspective. That you can just go to a different grocery store.
Yes.
You can go to the market on Saturday. You can invite somebody over to dinner that maybe you want to become a new friend with. So there's so many ways to create a new sense of perspective,
Right.
and community in right around you, right where you currently are.
I love that. And it's true. I have a friend who lives next door, as a matter of fact, and she walks her dog every morning. And it was her mother's dog. So when she adopted her mom's dog, her mom is ill. So every time she takes Fergus for a walk, she's walking a trail in the area. And she's met so many people just through walking and people thinking her dog is cute.
Yeah.
But the nice thing is that her network is growing, her community is growing, and I love that because that's exactly what we need in this world right now is people just connecting and being civil with one another and thinking positively about what could be, the what ifs, right? There's hope right there.
Yeah. I think by shifting some of our surroundings and our environment, it does help us look at things in a new way, which brings hope.
Hey, I used to move every year.
Yeah.
Every year. Partly because when I was a kid, I had to. But when I became an adult, I didn't know how to get out of that habit. So every year I would change, and it might be just the other side of town.
Yeah.
But it was the other side of town, and it was always great.
Yeah. Take a new path to work, whatever it is. How can we shift our perspective, which allows new possibility and new hope? So this year, our focus is clear: light the spark, ignite genuine hope, and lead the change. Because hope isn't passive. It's something we practice through intentional everyday choices. Leadership begins when we take what resonates and allow it to shape how we show up for others and ourselves. And if this episode resonated with you, share it on your social media so the spark can travel even farther. We hope you'll keep listening because we have more exceptional podcast episodes coming up with more fantastic guests. So be sure to subscribe to Lifting Leaders Podcasts on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. If you're looking for help in developing your leaders or would like a growth opportunity yourself, please contact us through our website at www.liftingleaderspodcast.com. Thank you to Ari Chance Roberts for his technical support of our show. Finally, please take 30 seconds to follow us. It helps you because you never miss an episode, and it helps us
because you never miss an episode.
To follow us, go to the Lifting Leaders Podcast Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Then just tap the plus sign in the upper right-hand corner or click on follow. While you're there, if you'd be willing to give us a 5-star rating and review and share the episode with a friend, we'd be so grateful. Thank you, Tricia, for leading us through this episode.
It was so much fun. Thanks, Kristal.
Many thanks to you, our listeners. We really appreciate you.
Yes, we do.
Until next time, keep lifting leaders.
Bye.